to the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats Podcast. Sorry, I had to think for a second because I just recorded So You Like Horror and it's still in my head. So we're here on Off the Mats Podcast, and today's guest, as we are quickly getting to 200 for this episode 197, perhaps, is actually someone I know personally. I know most of the guests personally, but a lot of my guests come from Instagram, just kind of like, the remote friendships. So this is actually a teammate, a coach, a friend, and we exchange horror movie trailers on Facebook, and it occurred to me, hey, wait a minute, let me get this guy on here. I mean, he's full of wisdom and info. So my guest for this episode is none other than Mr. Coach Neil Duke. Hello, Coach Neil. How are you? And thank you for doing this.
Pleasure to be on the show. I never would have imagined that this would be an opportunity. Never crossed my mind before, but happy to be here. Happy to have the chat.
Oh, I'm glad that it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. It's just kind of like I think as like I'm just rolling with the day. I'm like, oh, I got to reach out to Coach Neil, and then I'll make a note. And I just kind of move on with my day, drink some water, watch a movie, and then then it comes back. It's like, oh, it's 1 a.m. I'm not going to shoot a message now, and so this has been kind of a procrastination for a while. So I'm glad we finally got to do this. And one of the things that always occur to me when I'm thinking about like, hey, I want to have you on, is like really just talking jiu-jitsu first and foremost, because as much as I've learned from you, I always feel like, man, this guy has like all this like jiu-jitsu wizard stuff going on and knowledge. Like, I gotta know like where like how why well, like what started you in this. So if you don't mind, like how did you come about jiu-jitsu and just this journey?
Yeah, well, I guess my first disclaimer is I think I'm a certified OG in jiu-jitsu at this point because I've been around for a good amount of time. But the first time jiu-jitsu ever came to my attention was probably in the early 2000s. At one point, I used to be assigned on Andrews Air Force Base. I was an Air Force officer at one point, and I would drive around Camp Springs, and I would see these little handmade posted signs on tree lines and power stations or whatever the case was. And it would say, learn jiu-jitsu, train Gracie jiu-jitsu. And I always thought to myself, well, that sounds intriguing because I come from like a martial arts sort of background. I did Hapkido. I did Goju-Ryu when I was assigned overseas. All the usual karate, breaking board stuff and forms, exercises, which I found at the time I was engaged in it. I guess it was okay. I thought I was doing something. I remember when I was a kid trying to convince my father to enroll me in karate because I wanted to, defend myself in school, for one, because I wasn't the biggest kid. But I became disillusioned, I guess, with karate and as a martial arts right around the same time I was learning about the possibility of jiu-jitsu, because no disrespect to the karate and taekwondo practitioners, but you don't learn a lot really how to defend yourself when you're doing forms and breaking boards. So
Sure.
I see these signs, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and it's to Lloyd Irving's place. And back then he was kind of new to the industry, but he had a school up in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And I thought to myself, and this was around the same time the UFC was just kicking off too, right? So you're seeing this little guy named Royce Gracie standing up to like the Chemo Leopolds and the Dan Severns and the Ken Shamrocks, and just whipping some tail in his pajamas at that. And I'm thinking, this little Brazilian guy. I mean, I'm probably his size, and God knows I could probably use a little bit of his self-defense skills. And I'm thinking, I should try out this school. So, longer story made short, I found where Lloyd was operating his school in Upper Marlboro, and back then it's nothing like it is now. I mean, now it's internationally known. Some of the best grapplers in the world cycle through his school. But back then, we were on carpets and in a very small space in Upper Marlboro. And I remember going to his class, and back then, Jiu Jitsu had no chill. Your first class there, you were sparring. And, and I remember finishing up getting my tail whooped, and I don't know how my tail was whooped. And Lloyd approaching me after class and saying, "Hey, you have fun? You gonna be back?" And I'm thinking, literally my muscles were quaking at that point, and I'm thinking that was the worst experience I ever had, but I have to come back. So I'm like, yeah. So that's where my jiu-jitsu journey started, by just coming back for that second class. And like I said, it's been, I guess, maybe 20 years. I hate to say that because all my young friends will say, "Good grief, you're ancient."
Oh, I don't think of it as ancient as much as it's, seasoned.
Yeah, that's
Um,
why I'm well seasoned. I'm the rotisserie chicken that's been in that oven for a while. In fairness, my jiu-jitsu journey has had its peaks and valleys, but based on injuries, based on family needs. There have been times I've stepped away from it for months, sometimes a few years. But jiu-jitsu's that your high school crush that you can't get over, and I always wind up
yeah.
returning to jiu-jitsu one way, shape, or form. And I've been back now at least for the last year and a half or so, I want to say.
Okay.
COVID kind of put a strain on everything. COVID
Yeah.
was a brilliant justification to avoid human contact. So I remember I kind of put it on the back burner for a bit until I finally said, I looked at the scale, and the scale told me, "Neil, you need to get your butt in the gym again." And that's where I've been. Love the sport.
Good, good. Uh, COVID, I think, was kind of I know for me, it was a wake up call. I think I just got in my blue belt, and it was at a point where I was going as much as possible. And one day my wife says to me, "Hey, so your daughter hasn't seen you in a while. You probably need to like have more than one day off per week." And I was like, "Oh, because like I was off on Saturday because I worked, and then I come home from work and like my daughter's being put to bed, and I go to the basement and then watch movies or you know pose action figures or whatever I do down here." But like COVID was, in one way kind of a wake up call, I know for me, but then at the same time, I think it kind of put us all as grapplers for the most part kind of in a weird spot where we're like, we do a martial art where we're up close and personal with folks, and we
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah, it was a real dilemma. But like I said, I I think I'm probably weighing in at around 186, 187 right now as I'm sitting here. But during the COVID days, when there was nothing for me to do other than watch movies and snack, I was probably a good 20 pounds heavier. And it became visible when I would look down with my toes, and I'm like, that round mound there on my belly, I don't remember that from when I was youthful. Uh,
Yeah.
it's definitely like riding a bike. You
Oh yeah.
once you return, things come back quickly, all the muscle memory. And right now, it's where I'm trying to perfect all the old muscle memories that I had, all the information that's been taught to me over the years, trying to have that seamless kind of jujitsu. At least that's my goal.
Well, I mean, I haven't rolled with you and God knows how long, but I'm sure that there's this fearful respect. Like, I think the last time I rode with you, I think I was like coming into my own. I was like, okay, I got this dude. I got him. And I feel like for me, I was just like overzealous and trying to pressure pass you. And you just use my weight against me. It was like, come on, dude. like, like, what are you doing here? And it just got swept him out and felt like, okay, I still got some learning to do, but we all do.
You were always a fun role though, because we always rolled with each other with respect. It was never one of those spazzy situations where we're pretending we're chasing a medal or something like that. Because
True.
we have to go to work the next day.
Yeah, that's always my approach to every role with everyone is look, we've got day jobs. So let's just be cool. And every so often, you know, like with Huggy, he and I would always have like those end of the world roles where we're just colliding and scrambling and by the end of it, we're both smiling and laughing, but during a roll, it's like he would refuse to tap to anything, and I'm like, dude, like we're gonna get hurt. like we like someone's got to tap. He's like, well, it won't be me. But that's like the rare case where I'm like, okay, like we're going to the depth. Most people, yeah, it's like, you have to be respectful. You have to, take care of your training partners. It's like I always say, you break your toys, you don't have anything to play with, the next day.
Yeah, that's so right. I mean, you can only do so many Kong versus King Kong or Godzilla versus King Kong matches before your body starts to, feel the effect of that. But
Yeah.
the challenge for me now is as a brown belt, um, letting other people work, and then also kind of figuring out, all the muscle memories, all the techniques, and using appropriate techniques. And they tell you as a white and a blue belt, don't use strength, don't use strength, use technique. And that's kind of hard to do because everyone has a little bit of ego in the game. And when someone starts pressing you, then you're like, okay, I'll escalate as well. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think I'm coming to the point now where I can relax more and just appreciate the rounds more. And I'm finding it's really doing great for my cardio because when I first started, I was like 100 miles an hour. I wasn't going to beat you with technique or skill. I was going to beat you because I was just going to swarm all over you and go 100 miles an hour, which is great for 30 seconds or maybe a minute. And now I'm learning that by just breathing and relaxing and just thinking things through, the rounds go by a lot quicker, not really tired or exhausted after rounds necessarily. And I just attribute that to having a different mindset when rolling. Plus, as a brown belt for the junior belts, you're somewhat of a target, and part of that is ego. Do I let this white belt get into a good position because they're going to think that I'm a tomato can, like our old instructor used to say, or do I just let them work and because I have no ego in the game? Uh, I guess sometimes it depends on who you're rolling with too. there there's
Oh yeah.
some there's some dudes that need to just know that you're capable of inflicting grievous bodily harm. And then there are the nice dudes who are like, okay, I'm just going to let this person work. Maybe I'll put them in a couple of difficult positions and talk them through how they get out. But jiu-jitsu is the ultimate equalizer because it doesn't matter what your background is, what kind of shape you're in. Everyone's equal once you get on the mat, and everyone's capable of prevailing in a match. So
Yeah, the ego part is huge because I think about there's a couple roles I know that I have even in the current day where it's like I look, we're gonna work together, but every so often I have to remind them I can I can do bad things. And then don't get it twisted. They can do bad things to me too, but it's really a race. Then it's like who's gonna do the bad first? But we're still respectful. Everyone's respectful, and at the end of the day, we just, we talk about it afterward. Like, hey man, you had me there. You're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was concerned. I didn't think I had you there, but no, you had me. But then I also, if you had me there, I also had this here. Oh yeah, okay. So it's all it's chess.
Yeah. It's weird for me to describe this, and I've tried it with other folk. But I think what keeps me in jiu-jitsu at this stage is I'm still waiting for that moment of grand enlightenment where it's like the Matrix and Neo when all the numbers, the binary system just come crashing down. And I'm like, I can stop bullets and manipulate time and space and everything. And jiu-jitsu just becomes like so understandable and relatable in a kind of cosmic sense. It, I'll give you an example where I first started thinking in this way. Back at our old school over in Severna Park, our old instructor invited this fellow black belt of his to do an instruction, and he was great. He was doing leg locks and all these different sort of things. But the moral of the story is once he stopped teaching his techniques and everything, he rolled with everyone in the class, and he started flat on his back, folded his hands over his chest like Dracula, and just had his hands near his neck, maybe just to protect from obvious chokes and everything. And he said, "Okay, let's go." And I'm thinking back then I might have been a blue or purple. I'm thinking this dude is going to allow me to like just maul him, and he's just laying on his back. So okay, clock starts, and I go at it, and I'm mounting and side controlling and doing everything in my power to like try to submit the dude. And he was like basically the Steven Seagal of jiu-jitsu. He would just like flick me off and then start back over again flat on his back. And I said to myself, ain't this the darndest thing ever? There's another side of jiu-jitsu I just didn't realize, and that's how effortless it could be, and just how effortless it could be if you have a mindset that you're going to defend uh, and you're going to use proper technique. And I'm like, that's where I want to be ultimately in jiu-jitsu, where I could just lay down, allow people to work, and nothing's going to phase me because I'm not going to be submitted. But again, ego and adrenaline and a touch of testosterone get caught up in the mix, and where you think you're going to have jiu-jitsu nirvana, you end up rolling with someone who's in a life or death situation, especially when they start going for the feet. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
The feet are off limits for me. As soon as I feel anyone touch my feet, I'm like, okay, now I have to turn it on because I it, I almost feel like, and that's my ego there. Is like I don't want to get foot locked in any way, shape, or form, or wrist locked. I
That's the devil's work right there. I
I
I will
it's,
share with you that it was back in August of last year. I had a partial rupture of my Achilles tendon,
ooh,
so I was down for a while, and they tried to convince me to get surgery initially when I went for my consult, and I'm like, slow your roll. Let's get an MRI and see what's actually going on with the Achilles. And as it turned out, it was a partial as opposed to a full rupture. One of the options, legitimate options, was just being patient, put in the boot, use cane, crutches, whatever, and wait this out and eventually go to PT. I was blessed that I was able to rebound fairly quickly. Guess August was tough. September was rough. October became tolerable. In November, I started having real progress. So I returned to the mat sometime in November, and haven't had any ill effects yet, knock on wood. But if anyone goes for the foot, at that point, it's on.
yeah. There um there was a open mat we had. I want to say 3 weeks ago, maybe, and we were just. I mean, for the open mat that we do, it's just drilling. No sparring of any sort. Just simple drilling, which it's very welcomed for me because I feel like that's something I don't encounter enough in my own routines. So when I'm put in a situation where it's like all we're doing is drilling, there's no other option. But one of the guys there was drilling wrist locks, and I'm just thinking, it's like, why? Like this, like that doesn't feel like something you should even be drilling, because you have to have a willing participant to just say, "Here, go ahead and wrist lock me." And I'm just sitting there thinking, it's like, you angry at us? Like, who hurt you? What, like, they you see guys, they work on leg locks and things, and it's kind of catch and release, but I'm just thinking like wrist locks, like, what? Prison rules? Come on, dude, we're drilling. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, those are prison rules. Wrist locks and certain foot locks are the last bastion of the coward, and occasionally I become cowardly. But look, I try not to judge, but when people go for wrist locks against me, I'm thinking this person is emotionally vulnerable and hurt, and they're trying to take it out on me for some reason, and I won't tolerate it. uh,
Whenever I have a weird relationship with wrist locks, because our old instructor, uh he and I would roll every so often, and I was very, I felt like I was really good at defending the wrist lock. I would tense up my wrists while, especially rolling with him. And I mentioned this just in conversation. It's like, but that's the one thing I just can't tolerate. And then I think I got comfortable with him one day. We're rolling, and my hand is just dangling there. He wrist locks me, and then from that point on, the rest of the week just sent me messages with hands like with the wrist circled, X-rays with like broken wrists, like completely snapped, and it was like, so how you feeling? And it's kind of like at a warehouse. 0 days since last incident. Um, so I had to start to ticker back over, and and when I returned to training kind of more frequently in the last year, one of our purple belts just did the most friendly wrist lock. Like, it's weird to say a friendly wrist lock, but he wrist locked me, and he was so polite about it, and just like I felt like I was mad. I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. Every time I saw him, like, you want to roll? I was like, no, I'm good. I'm just left. The class was over, but I had to start like kind of really thinking about it. It's like, dude, why are you angry about this? They're using the technique, but I just have really sensitive wrists, is what it is, and
what?
it I'm scared.
You're probably like me and 90 something percent of all jiu-jitsu practitioners. After you leave a class, and if you've tapped to something that's either BS, or you tap to it because you were tired, or you tap to it because you used bad technique, the drive home is intolerable, and it sticks
Mhm.
with you until the next time you're in class, and you're thinking to yourself, why did I tap? There are only 10 seconds left in the round, or why did I tap? And now this person's going to think that I'm a lesser version of myself. But yeah, that's the worst feeling. Regret from tapping to something that you probably shouldn't have. But
Yeah,
again, I know the seniors in the game say if you're not tapping, you're not learning. And yeah, I
true.
think there's truth to that. Um, if
I
you're not
agree.
challenging yourself, and if you're not being put in bad positions, it means you're probably not in the right school, or you're not with the right training partners, because you definitely need to have that grind in order to advance yourself. I think
Agree.
as much as I hate it in the moment.
Yeah, I think with the wrist lock for me, just that's the big tap for me, is the wrist lock. Actually, and I'm not going to put any names out there, but I know they're going to listen to this, and they know who they are. I was put in a triangle, and I was about to tap, and they wrist locked me. The hand that I was going to tap with is what they wrist locked. It's like you didn't give me the opportunity to tap. You just like it's I don't know. I'm emotional, but whatever. Like, And it was a friend. That's what made it worse. It's a friend. So I don't know.
Uh, there used to be a black belt at our school who was notorious for going for heel hooks. Now he wouldn't crank them, but he would jump into the heel hook, put you into at least with maybe it was just me, maybe he had it in for me. He'd put me in a heel hook. Um, I'm not going to try to escape from a heel hook and roll out of it because, like you said, I got to go work the next day. But he would put me in the heel hook, then he would look at me and smile. It was like one of those catch and releases. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, you son of a. I'm like a. I think at that time I'm like a white or blue belt at best, and you're heel hooking me. But it did lead to my refinement in the dark arts. That was my motivation.
It's like
I,
this is
I,
what led you to the dark side.
yeah, I was House Slytherin after that. Um, Forget those nice guys in Gryffindor or whatever it is.
Well, it's like they say, if you can't beat them, join them. So it makes sense.
Much respect to leg lockers. I'm trying to refine my game every time, but it is the great equalizer, especially with guys who play open guard. I
Hmm.
find once you grab hold of their feet and ankles, it changes their mindset as to how open their guard, how much of an open guard they want to play. So,
Yeah, that's a good reminder there because not that I play open guard very well, but there are times where I'm just sitting there. Now that I'm thinking about it, you know what? Let me just not commit to that anymore. Just it could get ugly.
yeah, know your training partners.
True. I feel like I'm at a point now when it comes to training partners. I will roll with anyone just because that's what we're there for, and that's how you learn. Is you get that experience with many different you know um grapplers. But from time to time, I have to say, do I have any injuries going on? How tired am I?
Yeah.
Because lately the cardio it's better now, but in the recent weeks it's like I get done with a roll and I'm like, dude, I shouldn't be this tired. And someone's like, Dante, you good for a roll? And I'm like, I don't know if I should. Like, and then I say, yeah, come on. It doesn't go well, but it is important though that, like you said, know your training partners, and it's okay to say no to a role every so often. Like I'm learning that now. Like just I'm gonna sit this one out.
Yeah, and I guess for the folks who are listening too, not all schools are equal. You just have to find the right school that fits your your um, your needs in jujitsu. Uh, I started off with Team Lloyd Irving. I'm still with Team Lloyd Irving / Crazy 88. But I've visited other schools and I've even enrolled in other schools from time to time just to diversify my skill set. And there was one place where I was a newbie and doing some stand up work. Well, actually, we started standing up. And I wasn't good at a lot of things, but I was good at not being taken down. And this particular blue belt was frustrated by that particular skill set that I had. So he kind of jumped. It wasn't even like butt scooting, it was like jumping guard and then throwing his hips into my knees, which buckled one of my knees and like hyperextended it. It took me out for like 6 months. And I'm like, after that, I'm like, okay, if this dude's still around, this isn't a place that is going to be a safe environment for me.
Yeah,
And I think I learned a little bit of jujitsu compassion after that, and I probably started for the first time slowing down.
I think there's a thing that comes with that though too, because like you said, that not all schools are created equal. You go to some gyms and it's super super casual, super laid back. You're definitely learning jujitsu, but kind of in a more relaxed setting. Then you have your competition settings, and then you have still to this day some gyms that are just the Wild West, and they're just like anything goes. Oh, you're wearing a gi? It's cool. He'll hook them. I don't think that's right. Oh, he's a white belt. Let the white belts heel hook. I definitely don't think that's right. But okay, wrist lock all the white belts. Like, dude, like I gotta leave this gym. I can't be here. Like people are gonna die.
Yeah,
So
it's like a bad episode of Survivor, except with everyone with jiu-jitsu skills and just utter mayhem. I
ooh,
get
I'd watch that.
it. Hey, We can get this greenlit. Put together a little script.
I've seen some things on television. I'm pretty sure we can make this happen. Like, with stuff I've been seeing lately, it's like, oh my god, they okay that? I've got some ideals. With your training right now, you said you just kind of returned back in November from the Achilles injury. Like how often are you training per week?
Like once a week has been going to, well, I'm trying to be cautious with the Achilles, but I try to get in at least once a week. And I think at some point I'll get off my lazy duff and I'll go into 2 a week. 3 a week would be really optimistic for me. I keep telling myself, I really should like return to like competition. So maybe this summer, if my mind and body agree, I'll start considering doing like one of those international sort of competitions. Because for me at this stage, as I'm getting more and more seasoned and the calendar keeps turning, I'm thinking to myself, as long as I continue to age gracefully, I could really wrist lock a bunch of people my own age on the international scene or any of my other devious little tricks.
Yeah, I wonder, like on the bigger stage, like the Europeans just recently took place. I want to say this past week, maybe. I wonder, what's their feel on wrist locks and if they got a good grasp on it, and just out there rolling. I know we sent a couple guys over for Europeans, and I know one of them is big on wrist locking because he forced me into a wrist lock. I'm not that I was nowhere near what I thought was a wrist lock, and somehow he grabbed my hand, tucked it into his like between his like shoulder and his like chin and wrist lock. And I was like, dude, you could just use your hand. Like, you don't have to do it this way. But like, I wonder, what that's, what their feeling is over in, Europe with wrist locks, and hell, I mean, even Brazil, I don't know. I think they're, kind of a mixed bag when it comes to leg locks and different things like that. But I'm always curious.
Yeah, they probably think those crazy Americans. I know one of our teammates won gold at the most recent Europeans over in, I guess it was in Paris, and I believe his stats were 4 out of 5 of his victories were wrist locks. So clearly, there's a cult of demonic submissions that that apparently I'm a part of.
Well, it sounds like it's pretty clear that over there they're not well versed in wrist locks. Then it's like, and I'm willing to bet the one that he didn't win by wrist lock, he probably was going for it, and they're just like, here, take the armbar instead. So it would have been 5 for 5. But yeah, that's exciting though. Just the thought of you, considering coming back and competing maybe, because I know for me that's something that's been kind of creeping in my mind is like, do I want to do this? And I think for me, the big part of it isn't so much the competition. I think it's the work to get to the competition now, because it's a lot. So
you definitely need that to hone your skill set and advance your game before getting there. And I get that. So we'll see if the body cooperates. Maybe I'll, as LL says, don't call to come back.
I can say that, I'm the ultimate cheerleader. I will tell everybody, yo, get out there. I believe in you. You got this. I'll start sending you motivational videos, Rocky soundtrack and everything. And then like, so Dante, are you going to do it? Oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not crazy. I got stuff to do. I got action figures to buy. Why would I compete? Like, I'm nice. I'm friendly. Like, I got a podcast. I want people to want to come on here and be my guest. Like, I don't want to go out there. Somebody beat me so bad in competition. They're like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? They probably just look at me like, no, we good. Like, I'll listen though. Like, no, you won't. That hurts. But I'm glad to hear that though. So One thing that I never knew this about you, actually, I don't think I knew it for a while training with you, is that you're a lawyer. Like,
Yeah, it is so contrary to my work life persona that people who I've worked with who have found out, they're like, what? That's crazy. But yeah, even from the very start, when I was first introduced to Jiu Jitsu, I was practicing law as a very young associate at my first firm. And now I'm just in a place where I'm, I guess, one of the more seasoned attorneys within my legal department. And, you know, people probably think it's a little bit out there for, for me to be doing this, but it actually, it actually in a weird sense has kind of helped. I'll put it this way: most people, at least unless you're like semi-psychotic, don't like physical confrontation. I mean, we don't go out there to the Wegmans or to the Safeway with the mindset that, you know, I'm going to beat someone's butt over here, over by the salad bar. No one thinks that way. Again, unless you should be locked up and you're just a burden to society anyway. And I'm the same way. I don't do physical confrontation, and actually, just the verbal confrontation in practicing law is, you know, I had to grow into that. But having practiced jujitsu, it gives you such a remarkable sense of calm during potential confrontational moments in life that I think it's really helped me with my own practice, to be honest with you. Things don't stress me out. Even in the worst scenarios where, you know, when I was in trial and things weren't going necessarily all that well, um, I just would think back to, you know, a moment on the mat where things were really dire, and I'd say, okay, this will pass. Oh, did you see
uh,
that one viral clip of the dude who jumped
mhm.
over and attacked the judge? Uh,
Yes,
that was so wild, and I'm thinking, if I were the judge and he jumped over there, I would take an arm, or I would wrist lock him or something.
yeah.
But
I
the
mean,
people, the
yeah.
personnel in the courthouse, I was looking at the video, and they were just so ineffective, and it just is a constant reminder that the vast majority of the universe, when stuff goes down, like Cypress Hill says, but in more profane terms, um, just aren't prepared for a physical encounter. And that's the beauty of jujitsu for me. I mean, the amount of self confidence that it inspires in you, that you can be anywhere out, you know, with your family and your friends. And if someone jumps over the proverbial bench and tries to jump you, well,
You're
well,
safe.
I hope they have good insurance.
Well,
I'll tell you this one funny story. I had this one expert witness on the stand, and I'm working my stuff with him and cross examining him, and it was over the issue of reaction time. Basically, his side of the case was that my clients roughed up his clients prematurely. They exhibited, you know, excessive force and all, what have you, against his client. The other part of the story was his client had rushed my clients, and my clients reacted to that being rushed with putting hands on them, uh, which I thought was somewhat reasonable. So my cross examination of him was, you know, you would admit that, you know, in the span of 10 feet, you don't know what a person might be carrying, you don't know what threat they are. And he was trying to convince me that, you know, they should have employed like verbal tactics with this person. And I'm thinking that wouldn't work. And one of my questions to him was, you know, he's sitting on the witness stand and I'm in the well of the courtroom questioning him. And I'm saying to him, um, if I were to approach him, you know, with hostile intent, um, would he admit that there's no way he'd be able to stop me before, you know, within 10 feet of space? And he said, oh, I would put you on your back so fast. longer story made short, he also was a jiu-jitsu practitioner from somewhere in Jersey. So we had a good chuckle about that after the fact. That he was actually a really decent guy. And I'm like, you really think he put me down? He's like, yeah, I put you down. I'm like, I don't think so, but eventually maybe we'll hook up on the mat somewhere and we'll figure this out. But yeah, funny moments in the practice of law when jiu-jitsu and lawyering collide.
It's also funny too, just the chances of that situation being earned and both people practice jujitsu, which is becoming almost kind of a more common thing, to some degree. I think a lot of people, if they don't particularly stick with it, maybe they've dabbled, so they might
Yeah.
have some idea, not a full idea if they only stuck around for the trial, but people are trying at least.
I've always thought, and I never get in physical confrontations. I don't know. Maybe it's just either I look too reasonable for people to try to pick on me, or maybe I just am too beefy for people to pick on me. I always thought that if I ever got in a confrontation with someone physically and we come to find out that we're both in jiu-jitsu, we'd be best friends and we'd go out and have drinks or something. Because it really is a brother and sisterhood in jiu-jitsu. And it's a growing population, but still, you kind of appreciate the journey other people are on too.
I always talk with one of my co-hosts about he's a big boxing fan, and we talk about MMA, boxing, jiu-jitsu, things like that. And a lot of times the conversation comes up of just really well, what if this person fought this person, da, da, da. And they're always hypotheticals, and it's like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't imagine they're gonna, unless it's a paid fight, it's something that's sanctioned. Most people who practice martial arts or any kind of combat sport, for the most part, don't tend to practice it out in the open, out in the regular everyday life, because you know most of us are, we know that violence now, so we're like, it, this can hurt someone. Or and also, not just that, you could get hurt no matter how well versed you are. Injuries can happen. And, when we practice in the gym, we're all under the same ideal, and we're doing things, we know how to roll and keep each other safe. But if you're in a situation out in the street and you do something silly and end up in a bad situation, although you might come out on top, there's still matters where you could end up zigging when you should have zagged, and
Yeah.
get hurt. So I think a lot of us tend to use verbal de-escalation, but we know we have it in our pocket if we need it.
Yeah, I think some of the most peaceable and well-adjusted people are my jiu-jitsu friends who have attempted to strangle me or put me in various locks or kill holds or what have you. Some of the more maladjusted people are the ones that really can't fight, but they've probably watched a couple of UFCs and a couple of videos, and when they see red bodies start hitting the floor, sort of mindset.
That's always my favorite thing to hear, is like, well, when I see red, I had a coworker, they would say, I don't know, I mean, if I black out, and I was like, if you black out,
It's
good
because
luck.
you've been choked out.
It's like, when you black out, yeah, there's a reason for it. It's always and it's just crazy because I still hear people to this day still saying it, but those are also people who probably haven't touched violence in a way that, it's like when you see two guys at the bar fighting, it's two people who more than likely don't know how to fight. So it's like, you'll hear things like, I think there's a rumor of Jimmy Fallon getting into some scraps, and they're like, oh, Jimmy Fallon can fight. And it's just a weird thing. It's
Yeah,
like, really?
there are degrees to that, to fighting, right? And
Yeah.
I'll admit, everyone can be dangerous for 30 seconds, and then
Mhm.
after 30 seconds, that separates the degrees of your skill set. I mean, I used to box in college until like my sophomore junior year, when I decided I was taking too many shots to the head, and I needed to focus on graduation, things like that, and not having my
Yeah.
folks waste money on my college education, just for me to take punches every day. But it's a beautiful. All martial arts have some degree of beauty, from boxing to Muay Thai to Jiu Jitsu. Jiu Jitsu is just what's always kind of captivated me, because it's overused when you say it's human chess, but I mean, a physical struggle against someone else who has similar skill set and is resisting you is probably as close to an actual fight as you're going to get, without the punches to the face or the knees and all that stuff. And for that, you can just do Muay Thai class, or kickboxing class. But yeah, it gives you the ultimate sense of satisfaction and confidence. And I don't know where I would have been in life without jiu-jitsu. Oh, I probably would have weighed a whole lot more. Maybe I'd be lifting more and putting on gym muscles and saying body's going to hit the floor after I see red and black out. Maybe I'd be one of those gym bros. I hope not.
Jiu-jitsu turned me from that. I was that when I came into jiu-jitsu. I was that guy. I was lifting weights, had like muscles all up my neck. It was like, oh my God, like what is this guy looking to do? And then when I got choked with my own t-shirt, I realized, okay, maybe, just maybe, all these muscles ain't doing nothing for me. And that's not to say strength doesn't have its place. There is the great debate these days, but if you got a bunch of muscle and you ain't got no skill, you're just a target now for someone to show you the gentle art and fold your clothes while you're still wearing them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, unless you're that 0.5% of muscle and mass, like what's his name, Brian Shaw, those guys who are like 300-400 pounds, strongman competition. Yeah, they don't have necks, and there's certain submissions you probably want to go for. Like arm bars are probably useless because their arms are the size of your legs
yeah,
anyway. Um, those are like the point something percent of dudes that once they learn jujitsu, plus their mass and strength, are going to be terrifying. But most everyone else, their cardio is only going to be limited to X amount of time. And I've always thought, worst case scenario, I just employ the dark arts, wrist locks and heel hooks.
yeah. Well, again, there's a time and place for those, and practice is not those. But if you're in a dire situation, sometimes you might have to shred someone's ACL, just to remind them, hey, guess what? The fight can always be taken to the ground, my friend. But hopefully those situations don't come up where necessary. But like I said, for a lot of us, we try to de-escalate using words, but we have it in our pocket if we need it.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's the gentle art. And for me, it's just a matter of learning and continuing to develop skill sets where I can just be entirely comfortable and just flow through my jujitsu. I don't know when that's going to happen. It could happen next week, or it could happen years from now. But that's what I'm constantly searching for in jujitsu, is that perfect Zen moment where everything just kind of flows together.
The aha, I got it now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think those come in like stages or steps at times, because I've had like aha moments at like certain points where it's like, aha, I don't have to use all my strength. Like, all right, now that I'm not using all my strength, then you get to the next aha moment. Aha, like, you got to keep moving. You're like, okay, now that I've gotten those two things out of the way, aha, beat a man on top. Like, yes, have a ground game, a guard game, but you shouldn't rely on it. So I think there are always those phases, those steps as we go through our journey. At least for me, those were those aha moments where I was like, oh, okay, now I got it. And then I was like, wait, no, there's more to get. There's still more. So
There's always something else that you're missing. Like, one
yes,
of my usual laments is after I come home from a class, I start thinking to myself, wait a second, I knew something that I could have done at that particular moment that I'd been training like maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Why didn't I try that tonight? I'm thinking, oh yeah. And then I've been in the game long enough where I know a series of different moves and possibilities, but I've forgotten a lot of them because I'm not training, multiple times during the week, and I'm probably not giving it enough thought during the week too, which is probably something I should probably start doing because part of jiu-jitsu is, just having the right mindset and thinking through things. Um, Everything is training, uh,
Yes.
including making some time for yourself to mentally rehearse your game, which is something I probably don't do enough of.
I think note taking is huge. I remember your Friday night class. There's one of the classes. I think I left my notebook, and you had given me your notes. You're like, well,
Yeah,
here, So
yeah.
like I went home and stapled them into my notebook, and then I have a second notebook that I write a lot of stuff. Like it's weird because I have one notebook where I take like post-its
Mhm.
and I stick the post-its to the page. I have another notebook where I write the stuff out, and it doesn't make sense, but it does to me. It's like I don't know why it's that way, but it's like, I'll write notes on what in writing it out. I know for me makes it kind of like because I have to play it out and then like remember, okay, this is what we did, and oh, that's wrong. Let's take a few steps back, but I'm also trying to get better at when I'm away from the mat, incorporating just like thought about it. My daughter, I think well, I know we're putting her in like these acting classes now,
Mhm.
which starts this weekend. And she keeps asking, Dad, can you teach me some jujitsu? I'm like, well, I don't know if I should be the one teaching you jujitsu, like, because I would be like the worst teacher for her, just because she'd be like, I hate jujitsu, I hate you. And it's like, but she's at the age now, she's grown like size wise enough where I can kind of work some heel hooks on her. Her leg is just big enough. Um, so it's like as I'm sitting, on the couch sometimes, like on my phone, looking at like YouTube, I'm like, and I look over at my daughter, I'm like, no, her arm isn't quite big enough yet. Like maybe next year. But then I look at her leg and I'm like, but
those
her
those
foot
feet.
fits. So but
Oh,
keeping the thought of jujitsu, away from the mat, is it's always one of those things that I've struggled with, but I'm trying to get a lot better at it myself.
yeah. There are times I catch like one of my old notes, and I'm thinking to myself, what was I teaching? How did I do this? Um, it's always beneficial to like have a good training partner. You remember Ryan, um, aka Kungle?
Yeah, I was just thinking about him in that moment. So I was thinking about when he was teaching us cross chokes, and I still there was like a way that he was showing us. I still do it to this day.
Yeah, finding a good training partner. We used to, even after the Friday night classes, we'd stay after a little while and like just experiment with stuff, which helped out tremendously, because you need that room to grow your game where you're not just, just not just the basics, but also learning situational awareness, what parts of you might be vulnerable to attack, and
Yeah,
vice versa with your opponent. Um, but yeah, those are fun days. Hopefully to be recaptured.
yeah. It's weird now. I only typically make it in on Saturday, and I'm starting to do the open mat on Sundays now, just to get that drilling in. But usually during the week, the issue that I would always have, because I like that after class, just kind of 5 minutes after at least to kind of just ask questions and go over some things. But during the week, it's always tough for me to get that just with the night classes. I don't even go to night class anymore anyway, because by the time class is like ending, my wife has to get to work. So I'm like, I'd like she's probably going to be late. But on Saturdays afterward, it's like We do open, we have like kind of a 30-minute open mat. We just spar afterward. And then, even after that, we'll sit around on the mats and just talk and then talk through things. Then the talk becomes like, here, let me show you. And then let me show you because, hey, let's drill that a couple more times. So,
Yes.
there's evolution to it.
And it's all about the journey, my friend.
Yes, yes. And I think that's something that is important in keeping people active on the mat and keeping people, just invested in it, is understanding it is a journey. And if you're in this with the ideal of, I say this with everything, podcasting, jiu-jitsu, comic book collecting. If you're looking at this, we'll use jiu-jitsu as the example there with belts. I'm here for this belt. I'm here for that belt. You're going to struggle. If you go into podcasting right out the gate talking about, I want sponsors and I'm going to make money, that's equal to trying to get belts. You're going to struggle. If you go into comic book collecting thinking, I'm buying this book for this value and that value and that value, you will struggle. And you have to kind of come into it for that journey and really for the love of it. Like I wouldn't want to do jiu-jitsu if I didn't like it. If I hated jiu-jitsu and I'm just still showing up every week to get wrist locked, you probably should, like, I don't know, check my meds. Like, is this dude medicated? What's wrong with him? Or if I'm, you know, collecting comic books, spending, $5 to $10 per book each week, thinking like, oh, this is going to be the one. This is going to be one. All those books are still worth $5 to $10. Like,
Yeah,
nothing's $100 or $1,000.
no
Just got to
doubt
have
about that.
passion.
Definitely agreed.
One question that I used to ask, and I want to get back to asking, and with you having been in the game, since the early 2000s, that I still, would be interested in knowing, like, when you started training, early on, and you look at yourself from now to back then, is there anything that you would say to your younger self on the mats, to your current brown belt self, say to white belt, Coach Neil, what advice would you give yourself back then, or would wished if someone would have given to you?
That's a great question. And it actually has formed my coaching mindset because when I coach and I teach, I'm always thinking, what can I tell this person who's relatively new to the sport that I wish I would have known? What can I show them that I wish I could have learned when I first started to avoid, the miserable first couple of years of getting your butt whipped. I would say if I were to meet my younger self, it was probably very spazzy, but strong and nimble. I would tell myself, just allow myself to be or learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations on the mat. And I think initially when I started, and it still creeps in occasionally, I was always trying to avoid a situation where I wasn't comfortable. Like I didn't want to be under side control. I wouldn't want to be under someone's mount. I didn't want someone to take my back. I always wanted to have top control if at all possible, and I always wanted to be on the attack. But had I been able to convince the younger me to just enjoy the journey enough where you have to put yourself in bad situations and learn to breathe through it and just defend through it, um, I think that probably would have saved me some years of grief. And actually, I will give a shout out to one of my OG friends, Paul Greenhill, who is now a black belt and was one of the original OGs at Team Lloyd Irving. He used to have us do a session in class where one person could only defend and the other person had to attack. And that kind of opened me up to the whole notion that because the persons who were attacking typically weren't getting submissions. And he would explain that if your focus is entirely on defending, you'll probably defend and you won't be submitted. So it got me in the mindset of thinking, well, I just need to have that mindset sometimes. Just give in, knowing that for this stretch of time in this match, I'm just going to be defending because the person has got the upper hand, and I just need to wait, ride out the storm, until I can swap roles with them. But yeah, that'd be my advice. Just learn to get comfortable in bad situations and not freak out, and use all your oxygen, your cardiovascular energy to try to escape. Just let it go.
I wish I would have known that back then as well. 'Cause that first year, what's first year of once per week, and learning that probably at the beginning part of year two is like, oh wait a minute, like if I was here more often, I probably would have learned that 3 months in instead of a year in. So that's definitely
Yes,
extremely important.
there's nothing worse than someone larger than you on top of you, sweating on top of you, and attempting to attack your neck or whatever. And when you learn to ignore ignore the pain and the suffering, that's when your jujitsu really takes off, I think, because you're always only a moment away from escaping, unless of course you've exhausted yourself because mentally you're you're depleted by being in that bad situation. I've always thought for like in UFC fights, you see their 5 minute rounds and guys look exhausted and spent after five. It's not because they're bad athletes and they're not in shape. It's because of the psychology and the emotions and everything else that goes into fighting. Yeah. But some of the guys with the best cardio aren't just the guys who train at high altitude, but they're also guys who are incredibly relaxed when they're fighting. But if you're tense all 5 minutes, I can't do that anymore.
I think last week I was so like just tired, so like physically burnt out. I think the last two rolls of the open mat sparring after class, like I looked at my partner across from me and was like, okay, why don't we do this? And they got it. Like I didn't even have to say anything. They immediately picked up on the fact that this is going to be the most flowy flow roll that you've ever encountered. And it was just that it was a dance. We are moving in ways where it's like, okay, we're just catching, releasing, and just flowing. That was, one of the other blue belts with me. The white belt that I rolled with like that, they picked up on it eventually because they said, okay, this guy's not really attacking me. He's like, I was attacking, but I wasn't like, putting my weight down on him or anything and mount. I was like kind of giving him room to work with, and was just trying to keep everything loose, keep everything flowing because dude, we just got done with an hour class and then we just had 25 minutes or 20 minutes of sparring here, like 6-minute rounds. So let's just relax. Do you see? I'm the sweaty guy in the gym, and there's a pool right here, so I don't want to do this. And there is something extremely important to that, relaxing and not being so tense. And it's funny because I think it's like I wish everybody knew that, but sometimes you can say that to people, but it takes practice, I guess, to get there.
It does. You have to really commit yourself to the relaxation component of jiu-jitsu. And it's not always the easiest thing to kind of give in to your ego and your aggressive mindset. But that's what makes the journey so important, I guess, and so worth it.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like that's the perfect spot to wrap up here on. So, Coach Neil, thank you again for doing this.
No,
thank you for sharing your info.
I appreciate you having me on. I've never done a podcast. I did radio way back when, but I've never done a podcast. So I'm scratching this off my bucket list. Well, and I'm going to need, you're still at Taverna Park, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I need to come visit you guys at some point. I told Jose I was going to do that.
Yep. We are there on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings now, I believe. But yeah, absolutely. I would love to roll with you. It's funny because sometimes on Saturday mornings you'll show up and it's a whole bunch of the old Ivy League guys, and it's like, oh, this is the OG, and I'm like, oh, OG crew. Like, I need to come here more. And then I'll come the next week and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. There's a bunch of new faces and no old faces here anymore. Like,
Yeah.
y'all need to text me. Let me know.
But yeah, I'm putting it on my list of things to do, and just let everyone
Absolutely.
know if they go after my left ankle, it's on.
Well, I'm sure, the crew that's there, they know. Those seems like, okay, we've got a Jedi walking in here. Y'all better chill. Like, just relax. Um, but good. And with this being your first time doing a podcast, I'm glad to have, opened you to this world. Hopefully I love to have you back on again, just to, like the conversation was so casual and super flowy. It's like, dude, that felt like a flow roll. So love to have you back on.
That's us. We're distinguished gentlemen. We flow.
Hey, I'm getting there. Like, I wouldn't go that far. Say I'm distinguished yet. I'm a gentleman yet, but I'm working there.
Yeah. I'd be happy to come back, and I'll watch a few more horror flicks and give you my opinions on that.
Okay. I'm all for that. As a matter of fact, after I get done here, I have to have my wife record an intro for our Nightmare on Elm Street episode, and then I got some notes to do for a found footage episode. So,
oh, nice.
It never ends. Never ends.
All right. Well, as long as you're doing what you love.
Absolutely. And as always, to everyone listening, thank you so much. If you have any questions, concerns, criticisms, feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Mats Podcast on Instagram. Either of those spots, mostly BJJ Wiki, because that's kind of the major one. And also you can email me. I sometimes check them, not a lot. But you can email me at Off the Mats Podcast, or is it Off the Mats 2020? Off the Mats 2020 at gmail.com. I do check it, I promise you. It's just I got a lot of emails, I got a lot of Instagram accounts. Sometimes I'll be forgetting things. So, but the link will be in the show notes. It's much easier. And I love to give a big shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio. Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky, Tiki. If you guys make it this far every week, you know the names because I actually forget most of them. Thank you to those guys. If it weren't for them, I would not be doing podcasting. I started with them many, many years ago, and here we are now. I had to do my own show because they didn't want to talk about jiu-jitsu. They want to talk comics. So I just made my own show. So thank you to Nerd Rage Radio. Go check them out if you're not listening to them. Also want to give a big shout out to my other podcast. So you like horror? It's about scary movies. And as you probably just heard, there's a Nightmare on Elm Street episode that is out. You guys should probably go listen to that. It was a fun time talking with another grappler actually up there in Ohio, Chad Kuhn up at Team East Coast. So go check that episode out. And Eugene Weaver, author. So go check that episode out. It was a lot of fun. And, we're prepping for a couple more fun episodes in the Cursed Films arena there. So we're going to be talking about the Twilight Zone, the film, or Twilight Zone, the movie. And then we're getting ready to set up the Omen as well, because apparently there's some cursed stuff going on, they believe. But Twilight Zone, the movie, it wasn't cursed. It was just John Landis was breaking some laws, and they say it's cursed. I say it was just bad judgment. And last but not least, I would love to give a big shout out here again to Mr. Coach Neil Duke. Thank you for doing this. I had a great time, and I feel like I learned so much. Just as usual, I'm always learning from you. So thank you for that.
It's a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you making the time, especially on short notice. I just reached out to you the other day. And you're like, "Yeah, I got this."
Yeah, what the heck?
And I have to change the date, and you're like, "I could do that too." Like,
yeah, I work from home, so I'm a captive audience.
Fair enough. So thank you for that. And as always, thank you again to all the listeners. You guys keep listening, and we're going to keep making these shows. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.